Hey, so good to see you. If you're new, my name is David. I'm one of the pastors here at CBG, and this has been fun. We launched a series last week called Jungle Cruising. Jungle Cruising. So nice of the nice people at Disney to launch a movie to help support our series. Very kind of them. It came out this past Friday. But it's a study of kind of the water themes and the rivers of the Bible. It's actually a very intriguing topic. And I can't wait to speak next week about my next topic. But today, this weekend, I have one of my favorite preachers on the planet back at Church by the Glades. Y'all know him. He's been here before. How do I describe Lori and Jud Wilhite? First word that comes to mind is brilliant. Two of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. Friends, encouragers. We do life together. We love them so much. Great parents, great leaders. In fact, they lead together Central Church, based in the Vegas Valley. Now, doing church in Las Vegas is a thing. But they have a massive ministry that begins in Vegas, but now they have campuses in Nevada, in Arizona, in Florida, other states, and then other countries. Australia, Mexico City. These are phenomenal leaders. One of the great churches in America. Jud has authored almost 24 books. So listen, I'll stop talking so he can start. If you will stand to your feet, Church by the Glades, make a little noise. Put a fist bump in the chat. Give it up for my friend, Pastor Jud Wilhite.
All right. Thank you guys so much. What a joy to be here. Nobody does speaker introductions like Church by the Glades. You guys are so gracious. Thank you very much. And it's always such an honor to be here. We love your pastor. Gosh, what a year this last year has been, the last 15 plus months. It's been hard on everybody. It's been hard on a lot of sectors, but it's been hard on churches. It's been really hard on pastors. And I work with a lot of pastors around the country. You guys are served by some of the best leaders and pastors in America. So Pastor David and Lisa, so grateful for the way you've led through the craziness of churches shut down and everything shut down and reopening and serving your city and doing everything you can for your community. Can you imagine where we would have been as a culture without the church over the last 16 months? And you guys have led so well. We've learned so much from you. We love you very much. We're very, very grateful for you guys. But you are part of a great church and a great ministry, and I am just honored to be able to share with you. When I think of jungle cruising, I think of the airport. I mean, I don't know if you've traveled lately, but it's crazy out there, y'all. People are crazy. I just saw this clip on YouTube. People getting in fights on planes, people punching, everybody's throwing down mask, no mask, all the things that we divide our culture kind of erupting in airplanes. And I think back to like in the height of kind of the earlier days of the pandemic, we had to fly for some family stuff. It was the first time I had really been around people in close proximity after, months and months like that. And so I go to the airport and I'm flying on, Southwest Airlines, which I love Southwest Airlines, but they don't have any assigned seating. So Southwest Airlines, somebody said this, Southwest is sort of like a school bus with wings, right? It took a minute, right? And then it hits you. How many of you rode the school bus growing up? Any school bus people? Oh, yes. Man, I spent so much of my life on the school bus as a kid growing up. I got in fights on the school bus. I asked girls out on the school bus. I even got my ear pierced on the school bus. Because, my parents wouldn't let me pierce my ear. So we got this brilliant thought that we'd bring ice onto the bus and a pin needle. And my buddies in the seat behind me, they took my ear and we got it all numb. And we actually did this on the bumps of the school bus. My much younger self thought, this will be cool. And they stuck that needle in my ear. Blood was everywhere. I had to go see the principal when we finally got to school because I was really young, and it closed right back up. So it didn't even work. Anyway, that's the school bus. But the worst thing about the school bus is when you're one of the latter stops and the door opens and you get on the bus and it's full. It's the Jungle Cruise. Right? And you got to walk the plank, the aisle. You walk down that aisle and you're you're just anybody. You're pleading with your eyes, right? Please, can I sit here? Could I sit there? Would somebody please just let me just move over a little bit so I can, just any sign of life. And everybody around you, you know what you did on the bus when somebody was walking the plank? You look down, you put your headphones on. Back for me, it was my Walkman headphones, with my cassette deck. And you stare at your feet. And you pray that they don't sit next to you. And I'm just going to tell you, at the height of the pandemic, and I know we're still kind of in it, but at the height of it on Southwest Airlines, I got on a Southwest flight and it was full. You weren't supposed to sit in the middle, but all the seats were full. I was going to have to sit in the middle in a pandemic on a Southwest flight. I had to walk the plank. Nobody made eye contact with me. I mean, everybody's like, hey man, like they're putting stuff in the middle seat. Nobody. Anyway, I finally sit down between these two ladies. They looked like, safe people. And I'm like, hey, I'm sorry to ask, but can I please maybe sit here? So I sit there in the middle. Now, have you sat in the middle on a flight? It's terrible, right? It's stressful. You smell things. People, their arm hair touches your arm hair. You know what I'm talking about, right? And then there's always the space invaders. You know what I'm saying? They're just not aware that dude, your knee is 4 inches over where it should be right now. And you're just kind of letting it all lay out there. And you're in my space, right? But what do? And then I'm one of those guys that if I fall asleep on a plane, I start to nod and my head goes one way or another. You know what I'm saying? So then you can't sleep in the middle because, you don't want to lay your head on some poor lady's shoulder. And she's like, really? Anyway, so I'm flying in the middle. It's stressful. And then it's a pandemic. And I kid you not, we're about 30 minutes into it. And this lady goes, no lie. And I'm just like, you did not. You did not. You didn't just do that. You can't do that. That is no longer allowed. Hold it. And this kept going. She did it multiple times. I was so stressed. And one time, mask came off because she's having a snack. And she coughed again. And I'm just sitting there like, dude, get me off this plane. We land, we get to the airport, and I needed a nap. I was so exhausted because being in the middle is exhausting. Being in the middle means you're stuck in a place of stress. You're stuck in a place of uncertainty. You're stuck in a place of unknowns. And a lot of us, the last 15, 16, 17 months, whatever it's been now, it's been in the middle. The middle of stress and pressure, uncertainty. And as soon as you think you can get a plan, right, for your business or a plan for your family or a plan for this fall or a plan for this next season, all these things start stirring up again and it feels like you're right back in the middle, right? You just want to get out of the middle, but the middle, some of you are you're there. You're in the middle of tension in your marriage. You're in the middle of tension with family members. You're in the middle of tension with your career. You're just in the middle. Some of you feel like you're in the middle with God. You're like, man, God, I love you and I'm following you and I'm serving you, but I don't know what you want from me right now. And I feel like I'm doing a lot of waiting. And I'm just kind of sitting around. I'm in the middle and it's stressful. And I need you to show me exactly what to do and how to move forward. And the Bible has a name for the middle. It's called the wilderness. The wilderness is that place between the places, right? It's that place between the place you were and the place you want to be, between the place of captivity in the Bible and the promised land to come. It's that in-between place, the wilderness. But here's the good news. God often does the miracle in the middle, right? It's in the tension of the middle and the struggle of the middle that God often does his greatest work in our lives. And so I want to talk to you today about sort of God's jungle cruise, if you will, with the Israelite people and some lessons that we can learn from being in the middle. Lessons we can learn from being in the wilderness. Lessons we can learn from being in between places in our lives. And you see it with the Israelites. God raises up a man named Moses. Moses becomes this incredible leader. And God uses Moses to lead the Israelite people out of hundreds of years of captivity into freedom. And they were enslaved to the Egyptians. Moses begins to lead them out of that slavery. And here's what happens in Exodus chapter 13, beginning in verse 17. Look at this. And when we get to the highlighted word, say this real loud here with me. It says this, when Pharaoh finally let the people go, God did not lead them along the main road that runs through Philistine territory, even though that was the what? Shortest route. God did not lead them the shortest route to the promised land. God said, if the people are faced with a battle, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led them in a roundabout way through the wilderness toward the Red Sea. Oh, this is good. Listen, how many of you want to go the shortest route? I'm all about the shortest route. Traffic, my inner pastor dies when I get in traffic. Because I just get out of my way. I just want to go the shortest route, right? So, we all you want to go the shortest route in your career. You want to go to the shortest route to success. Some of you right now, you want to go to the shortest route to finding the right guy or the right girl in your life. And you've been praying about it. And you've been asking God to open doors and to make it happen. And you're like, God, man, why isn't it happening? Why am I in the middle? Why am I stuck here? Why can't you just do it? Like, the shortest route is really not only what we hope for, in some ways it's what we kind of expect. It's what we kind of think ought to happen. I went to church through this whole thing, God. I was faithful this last year. I served you. I followed you. Therefore, what ought to happen is I shouldn't be in the middle anymore. I should be at the destination. It should be a direct shot. But did you notice that God rarely leads his people on the shortest route? God takes the Israelites, and it says he takes them the roundabout way. Now, I don't even need to explain the roundabout way, because if you've been a follower very long, you understand the roundabout way, right? Because we're all kind of on the roundabout way. We're all walking the roundabout way. Here's the thing with the Israelites. God could have led them directly through to the Red Sea and then ultimately to the Promised Land. But they weren't ready for the battles that would come. Because we read it together. If they went the direct way, they would have to go directly through Philistine territory, and they would face battles they weren't ready for. They were coming out of generations of captivity. That whole mindset God had to unwire and rewire. That whole framework that needed to happen in their life. They were not ready for the battle that would come on the way to the blessing. And so what God does is he leads them the roundabout way until they're ready. Let me just suggest to you, I don't know what you're praying for, what you're hoping for right now in your life, but I want to suggest to you that maybe you haven't experienced it yet because you're not ready for the battle that will come with the blessing you're praying for. Maybe. You know, if I could just meet that guy, it'd be awesome. If I could just meet that guy, everything would be perfect. He'd be beautiful and handsome and, be amazing and look like The Rock or whatever. And just maybe there's something in the past that still needs to be healed from, or there's something in the present that needs to be worked through because, every relationship comes with drama and tension. Every relational blessing comes with battle, and maybe you're not ready yet for the battle that you think you're ready for. So the Israelites weren't ready, but they thought they were ready, but they weren't ready. God leads them the roundabout way. And here's some things we learn from the Israelites in the wilderness. If you're in the middle today, then you will experience some of these things more than likely in your journey. Let's bring them up on this map. Check it out. The Israelites experienced a lack of direction. We're going to notice that a little more, that God led them the roundabout way. If you're facing a lack of direction, means you're in the middle. They face scarcity. When you face the test of the wilderness on the cruise of faith, what you find is you often face scarcity, a scarcity of resources or energy or supplies, because one of the greatest purposes of the middle, one of the greatest purposes of the wilderness is to basically break us of our self-reliance and lead us to a place of greater faith and trust. And one of the ways we learn that lesson is scarcity. I don't like it. I don't want it. But it's still one of the ways we learn that lesson, right? So the Israelites will face scarcity. You'll face moments of crisis. They faced all kinds of the moments of crisis in the wilderness wanderings. They faced oversized opposition, impossible obstacles, untested strategies for victory that God had called them to, that they had to push through. All of these were things they experienced in the wilderness. And if you're experiencing these things, I want to encourage you today. It doesn't mean that you've turned your back on God. It doesn't mean that you don't love God. It doesn't mean that it just means you're in the middle. It just means you're in the wilderness. It just means you're on the jungle cruise, and it's crazy right now. What do you do on the jungle cruise? Here's two simple thoughts. One is trust God's wild leadership, and it is wild sometimes in our lives and in the Bible. I saw this little piece. It was given to volunteers who were serving in the Amazon. And it was what to do if an anaconda snake attacks you. Like, have you ever thought, if an anaconda is supposed to be like the largest snake in the world, 35 feet long, can swallow an animal 300 to 400 pounds. Here's what you're supposed to do if an anaconda attacks you. If you're attacked by an anaconda, first of all, don't run. The snake is faster than you are. Number two, lie flat on the ground. Put your arms tight against your sides and your legs tight against one another. Number three, tuck in your chin. Now, I don't know about you, but that feels like bait. Right? I'm like, seriously, you want me to stop, lie down, put my legs and my arms together, and tuck in my chin? Number four, the snake will begin to nudge and climb over your body. Number five, do not panic. What world are you living on? Number six, after the snake has examined you, it will begin to swallow you from the feet in. Always from the feet in. Permit the snake to swallow your feet and ankles. Do not panic. Number seven, the snake will now begin to suck your legs into its body. You must lie perfectly still. This will take a long time. Number eight, when the snake has reached your knees, slowly, with as little movement as possible, reach down to get your knife and very gently slide it into the snake's mouth between the edge of its mouth and your leg, and then suddenly rip upward, severing its head. Number nine, be sure to have your knife. Can you imagine that moment? My knife's in my boot. Do not panic. Well, it's a lot easier said than done if you're attacked by an anaconda. And it's a lot easier said than done when you're in the wilderness, right? It's hard to not want. And even now, some of us, if we're honest, over the last year, we've had our moments of absolute panic, right? Our moments where you imagine the worst case scenario for your business or your family or your future or everything in your life. You went immediately to panic mode. And some of you, if you're honest, something to think about, you're still leading your company or your business or your marriage or your family from a place of trauma. And because of what you've been through, you immediately go to worst case scenarios and you immediately go to the trauma you went through in the past and you project it onto the present. And I'm just saying, as a leader who has led our church from a place of trauma this last year, this is something I've had to work through. But it's easy to want to panic in those moments. And it would have been easy for the Israelites. Check out this. Exodus chapter 14, beginning of verse 1. Look at this, so good. It says, then the Lord gave these instructions to Moses. Order the Israelites to what? Turn back. You see that? Like, what? Order the Israelites to turn back and camp there along the shore. Then Pharaoh will think the Israelites are confused. They're trapped in the wilderness. And once again, I will harden Pharaoh's heart and he will chase after you. So God is working a plan. God is setting Pharaoh up. But to do it, he's telling the Israelites like, hey man, now that you've gone, okay, now everybody turn around and go back this way. Can you imagine if you're an Israelite, you're like, dude, what is happening right now? God led us this way. And then he said, stop, turn around. We're going to go back this way. Okay, this feels like COVID. And then we're going to stop and we're going to turn around this way. And now we're walking this way, right? Or we all go, now we're all going back over here this way. God, what are you doing? This is wild. Sometimes God's leadership in our lives in the middle, in the wilderness, is just wild. And what I've learned is to trust it. Trust it even when you can't always understand it. Just surrender. I think so often we try to hold on to our self-reliance. I remember once I went to, I was kind of breaking up several years ago and burning out. And I went to see a counselor who sort of specializes in leaders and kind of helping them process things in their life. And so I went to spend a week with this counselor. And day one, he just has me talk like for hours and hours, just all kind. And at some point, I'm like, is this all I'm going to do? I'm just going to talk? Because it kind of felt like, hey, so, okay, this is, it's cool for like 30 minutes, right? We're like 5 hours in, I'm still talking. He got me talking about my parents, I'm bawling, it's the whole deal. Next day I walk in and I'm thinking, I guess I'm just gonna talk some more. And this guy has mapped out my entire life on a whiteboard that goes all the way around the room. And he's got written all these things that I said the day before, which it's not really fair. I didn't know these were gonna be on the whiteboard. And the number one thing that I said to him, that I said it 3 different times, was this: I can do it on my own with God. And he said, and first of all, I was like, I didn't say that. It's like 3 times. He said it, and he gives me the timestamp. Wrote it down. Same thing. This is deep in you, Jud. And here's what I think you mean. I can do it on my own with God, which is what you're supposed to say because you're a pastor. But you don't believe that. So he went up to the whiteboard and he scratched out with God. And he said, so what you really believe at your deepest gut level is I can do it on my own. And that's why you're in my office. So it's been years trying to unwire all of that. But I want to suggest to you that sometimes God leads us in the wilderness to break us of that kind of self-reliance, to get us to a place of realizing I can't do it on my own. God, I need you. I need to be surrendered to you. And God is trying to teach the Israelites to trust him even when it's wild and even when it doesn't make sense, to not panic, but to trust. Trust God's. I don't know what you're facing, but trust his wild leadership. Another thought is to just keep going in the middle. Just keep going in the middle. Listen, I only made one great play as a high school football player. One. I was no good. I was a bench warmer. Like, I played defense, which, look at me. Do I look like I'm a defensive lineman? No, they just didn't know where to put me, right? I could catch pretty good. I was just the slowest guy out there. So they put me on defense. I didn't play all year, just sat on the bench, did my thing, practiced. Finally, we're playing Dalhart, Texas. This is big league stuff, people. It's the 4th quarter. We're down by 3. They have the ball. I mean, there's less than a minute left. Like, we half thought they were just going to take a knee, and that was going to be it, right? Game over. We lost. And so somebody got hurt. I don't remember how it all went down at this point, but it must have been really bad. Like somebody got hurt and then the guy behind him got hurt and then like the quarterback couldn't go in to play defensive line. And the coach turns around and he goes, Wilhite, you're in. Here's what I remember. I didn't even know where my helmet was. I'm like, just somebody give me their helmet, because I haven't been in a game yet. It was bad. Anyway, I run in, take my stance, ball snaps. Somehow I get through the line, but I'm blocked way out here. And once I get through the line, one of my teammates, the quarterback doesn't take a knee. He strikes the ball falls out of the quarterback's hands, and then he falls down. So now the ball's bouncing backwards towards like our end zone. And I'm running after the ball, but I told you I wasn't very fast, right? So as I'm running, one of my teammates runs past me and falls on the ball. But he falls on it in such a way that it squirts out of his arms when he hits the ground, and the ball shoots another 15, 20 yards down the field. And I just keep running like Forrest Gump, just keep running, right? I don't know what I'm doing. And I kid you not, man, the ball literally bounced up into my hands, and I stopped. And I was standing in the end zone. Game over. We won. The coach, who hated me, ran onto the field and practically picked me up. He was so excited because we won this game. That is a picture of undeserved favor. That is a picture of a guy who knows nothing, who God just put at the right place at the right time, who just happened to stand there. And the ball fell in my hand. And when I read the story of the Israelites, for all their panic and for all their terror, they were always in God's hands and God's favor. And God was going to deliver them despite themselves. And some of you today got to realize, as hard as things may be and as tough as things may be in your life, you are in God's hands. He chose you. He called you. He lifted you up and pulled you out, and He is going to see you through. Look. You just got to keep going in the middle. Just don't give up. Don't quit. Just keep going because God has got it. And with the Israelites, they're in this situation where God's been leading them the roundabout way, trying to fake out the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh doesn't know, and the Pharaoh thinks they're lost, and therefore the Pharaoh decides, you know what, I let those people go. That was my workforce. I'm calling them back, right? So he goes out with his 600 chariots and all his best warriors, and he's chasing them down, and they're between a rock and a hard place. They're literally between the Red Sea and the army of Pharaoh of Egypt, who's charging. And I can imagine in this moment, they're standing there, they're literally feeling the ground move. The horses are descending upon them. Pharaoh's army is literally breathing down their necks. Did you ever stop and think God, why did you even allow this to happen? Just a thought. You could have just taken care of this, but we got all this drama. I got to stand here at the Red Sea and wet myself out of terror and fear that you're going to I'm going to die, right? And God lets this happen. I'm just saying, it's kind of bizarre when you fly high above it. You're like, Lord, you are interesting. And He leaves them in that moment. And here comes Pharaoh's army. And it starts to look hopeless. Here's what Moses says to the people. Exodus chapter 14, verse 13. Moses told the people, don't be afraid. Doesn't that feel a lot like stop, lay down, tuck in your chin, put your legs together, put your arms together, and do not panic, right? Just saying. Just stand still and what? Watch. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord Himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. Now that's a word for somebody, those last three words right there. Stay calm. just stay calm. God is rarely early, but he's never late. And God will often leave us in the middle when it feels hopeless and overwhelming. And there may be lots of reasons for that, some of which I don't pretend to understand. But certainly one of them is it breaks us of our self-reliance. And it leads us to a place of trust and faith, simple faith. And he says, look, don't be afraid. Just stay calm. So if you're in the middle today, I went back in my own life. I thought about probably the toughest season I've ever faced in my life was in what we now refer to as the years after the Great Recession. Both my parents were elderly and sick, and my mom eventually had passed away. And I was pastoring in Las Vegas, which was kind of ground zero for the Great Recession and the housing crisis, as were some parts of Florida and other sort of key pockets around the country. But I remember the stress of leading through those years and just how hard, it just aged me. You know, it was so hard, and going through layoffs and navigating the fact that I had friends in our church who were now in a food line outside that wrapped around our building. You know, 70% of homeowners were underwater on their mortgages. We had whole neighborhoods that were dark, just dark. I had to lay off a staff member because financially we were hurting so bad, who lived around the corner from me, who went bankrupt on his house. And every time I pulled into my neighborhood, the weeds were growing up in front of his house. And it was just hard, right? Hard. And these were the things that, as I look back on those years, about 8 years it took for Vegas to rebound from the Great Recession. These are the things I wrote down that got me through those years in the wilderness. And in the middle of the pandemic, in the shutdown, I went and pulled these things out again. And I reminded myself, these are the lessons, Jud, you learned in the last wilderness. These are the lessons you can hang on to in this wilderness. So let me encourage some of you today. When you're in the middle, when you're in the wilderness, when you're on the jungle cruise and it's crazy and it's wild and you're not sure what's coming next, first thing that has meant a lot to me is simply this: lean on God and look for opportunities to live for him. Just every day, lean on him, and every day look for opportunities to live for him today. The second thing is to just embrace today as a gift. You know, we're never promised tomorrow. We have the hope of heaven, we have the hope of eternal life, but it's today that's the gift, and every day is on loan from God. And where do we get this idea that we're immortal in an earthly sense, and we can always count on tomorrow and the next day, and our 5-year plan is the plan that should work? Like, just embrace today as a gift. Third thing, I got this from my wife. She preaches it to me a lot, y'all. Don't borrow trouble from tomorrow. Don't borrow trouble from tomorrow, meaning don't try to imagine what the future's gonna hold and borrow that trouble and bring it back into your life. Why are you borrowing trouble from tomorrow? It's not even here yet. Look, just because CNN or Fox said it was gonna happen doesn't mean it's gonna happen. Why are you borrowing trouble from tomorrow and letting it come back and destroy your life today? So Lori's always telling me, don't borrow trouble from tomorrow, Jud. Stop. Third thing, something my father told me. Your father may have told you this too, or your mom or your grandparents. Remember, this too shall pass. When you're in the middle, it seems sometimes permanent, doesn't it? Seems like you're never gonna get through it. Seems like you're never gonna come through. My dad used to always say that this too will pass. This too will pass. When we had our son, he was very, very busy. He was the last child we ever had. And Lori would call my mom, crying in tears. He just tried to climb out of the washer, and now he's trying to climb into the dryer, and he's just out of control. And my mom would laugh, say, he's just like Jud. This is so good. It all comes back around. She's basically like, I praise you, God, that you have brought it back around. And then she would end every call with that old, if you have grandparents, they probably said this too. Like, this too will pass. Just keep going. Just keep going. Just keep going in the middle. Just keep going. This too will pass. So Moses, in that moment, tells the people, hey, God's got this. And as Pharaoh's armies come down towards the Red Sea, he lifts his hands, and the Bible says that the water begins to part and that the Israelites walked across the Red Sea on dry land. Exodus 14 describes the scene, and it is the first time in the entire Bible that the word save is used. God saves his people. And that's key because Exodus 14 becomes really the salvific salvation moment of the entire Israelite nation and people. And it was really the foreshadowing moment of what would happen through Jesus and his death and his resurrection, what happens in our baptism, what happens as we surrender our lives. All of it, the foreshadowing is seen back in the Red Sea moment. Moses lifts his hands, the Red Sea parts, the Israelites walk across on dry land. Pharaoh and his army comes charging in. Moses drops his hands. The waters collapse, and the victory is ultimately achieved. And the battle isn't like over. They're excited, they celebrate, and they got a lot more wandering to do. They got a lot more difficulty ahead, and so will we. But God often does his greatest miracle in the middle. And when you're in that place of tension, you just got to remember that and hang on. Listen, when we're weak, he's our strength. When we're lost, he's our guide. When we're helpless, he is our helper. When we're sick, he is our healer. When we don't know the way, he is the way. When we don't know what to do when we're attacked, he's our shield. When we feel trapped, he's our deliverer. When we're out of resources, he's our provider. When we're scared, he's our defender. When we're broken, he binds up our wounds. When we're alone, he's our companion. When we're angry, he's our calm. When we hit rock bottom, he's our bedrock. When we're attacked, he's our advocate. Listen, when we sin, he's our forgiver. When we're afraid, he's our encourager. When we want to give up, he helps us rise up. When we fail, he's our victory. When we panic, he's our peace. When we're depressed, he's our hope. When we can't see, he is our fight. He is our light. When we don't know what to do, he is our refuge. And when we are overwhelmed, he is our anchor. Trust him in the wild. Trust him when you're overwhelmed. Trust him when you're trying to do it all on your own and realize you can't do it on your own, and then just keep going. God loves to do the miracle in the middle. God will not only lead you to the wilderness, but God will lead you through the wilderness. So if you're on the jungle cruise, if you're walking the plank, just hang on. Just keep going. Just keep trusting. Let's bow and pray together. God, I thank you for your love. I thank you for each person who's here today with us, not only in person, or also online and cross locations. I pray you'll just bless and encourage and work in each of their lives. God, fill them with your goodness and your love. We thank you for your word and the hope that it gives us. Thank you, God, that you never abandon us, that you don't turn your back on your kids. Thank you that we can trust that you have our issues and our fears, that we can give them to you, and we do give them to you now. We entrust ourselves to you in Christ's name. Amen.